Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is a Friday. Friday, November 14th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's choosing to join us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and you click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, we'll take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet, and is a tool I've been using to great effect for over 21 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again absolutely free. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one where people have been stepped through the worksheet process. And if you choose to listen to them even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words HeartLand Aramaic Forgiveness. And if you choose to do that before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on that, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. We hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. And secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, we'd greatly appreciate you doing so. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, or you can email Jeanie at jeanie@whyagain.org. And if we get a question or a comment from you, we'll address it on the internet show, and then as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time it occurred, so you can listen back to the archives for your feedback or input. The other alternative is you can join us live weekdays, most weekdays, from 11 to noon Central Time. Go to zoom.us and say you want to join a meeting and enter the meeting ID number 853-2357-4173. That's 853-2357-4173. You can also choose to just use one of the many phone numbers that Zoom provides. Call that number and enter the Zoom ID number and listen in. When you enter through the phone lines like that, you will be on automatically muted, and you can toggle in and out of mute by tapping *6 on your phone. So we're grateful that you're here, and we're wide open for conversation and questions and answers. We had our support group last night, and we've had some time reading from Guy Finley's book. His newest book is titled The Book of One Love, One Life, One Journey. In our support group last night, we watched the hour-long talk that's absolutely free through guyfinley.org/channel, CHANNEL. And he did a talk on this last Sunday, now that they've relocated and they're down in Florida, having moved from Southern Oregon after about 25 or 30 years there. His whole talk was around this idea of change, and the flow of life is change, and how we might create a mental, like a template or a way of looking at or interacting with life that's highly preferable to fighting with life. The filter or the interpretation of life that says life is just unfolding and whatever happens is just fine, just the way it happens, and it presents me an opportunity in that moment to ask, to be shown how I can be a blessing to myself or others in this moment. If you just look at life that way, if you make that one significant shift away from what our culture teaches us about judging right or wrong, good or bad, we know who's the villain and we know who's the good guy and we know who should win out and we know that our God is better than their. If we take a perspective that's 180 degrees off of that and we say there isn't any need for me to layer my thoughts and judgments on top of what life is doing in this moment. Not only is there no need for me to do that, but almost all of my suffering in life is the byproduct of me choosing to do that. Choosing to label or judge right as good or bad, life as good or bad, right or wrong, etc. And instead, if I choose 180 degrees off of that and choose to say whatever happens in life is perfect, it's life unfolding, and it gives me an opportunity each moment to choose for love over fear, or to ask, how can I be a blessing to myself or others in this moment? And since life is always changing, and we can observe quite easily that human beings have been trained into a response pattern when things change in a way that the human being judges is bad or wrong or it shouldn't be happening, the human being then chooses a response pattern which is basically fighting against the flow of life. And when we wake up and realize that that's what we're doing, and we realize the extraordinary futility of an approach like that, we might actually envision ourselves wading out into the middle of the widest part of the Mississippi River and facing upstream and screaming at the water that it needs to be flowing in the opposite direction. And we determined, I'm not leaving until this river flows the other way. That's how futile this is. Right? That's the same level of futility as somebody who gets angry and upset when somebody causes a traffic accident. Or they get angry and upset when their preferred person doesn't win an election. Or they get angry and upset when X, Y, or Z happens in their life that they say is bad or wrong. It's the same level of futility in that moment as standing in the middle of the Mississippi River, looking upstream, screaming at the water that it's headed in the wrong direction. That's never going to change anything about the Mississippi River. And my getting upset about life events as they unfold is never going to change the life events in any way, except it changes and it creates my experience in that moment. And so that's kind of a little riff on, or maybe an overview of, the talk that Guy Finley gave last night that we listened to in the support group. So I realize that we have people traveling to an intensive and or starting an intensive today, so our participation on the call may be a little bit lighter than normal, but we're grateful for your being here, and we're wide open to questions and comments or suggested topics. I will be reaching out to the to Christian Sundberg again to see if we can't pin down a time in the new year that we're going to have our conversation. And his name came to mind yesterday because two different people were talking about meaning in life and purpose in life. And Christian Sundberg clearly has a different perspective on that kind of thing than the average person you'll meet. With his book, A Walk in the Physical, and the theory that we all come here just to have the experience. Basically because it's like a playground. Basically that's like an amusement park for our soul, for our consciousness. So, again, please remember, we welcome comments, questions, answers, soliloquies. Somebody in the group last night said, I don't know what a soliloquy is. And so I looked it up and read the definition to them so they can have it in their mind. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind, etc., etc., to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. That would be a soliloquy. It's a statement, it's a little speech given in a play that's not necessarily directed to any character in the play or even the person or the audience. So it's just filling the air with your thoughts. Let us know what you're thinking. You can think of it that way whenever I say soliloquy. So here we are in reading in chapter 7 from Guy Finley's book, The Book of One Love, One Life, One Journey. This section is titled, Fulfill This One Need and Achieve Life's Higher Purpose. And Guy Finley writes, if someone were to ask you, what is your number one need in life? Can you see that your answer would often be determined by whatever condition dominates your life in that particular moment? In a moment of fearing, we might have something taken from us that we absolutely believe we must have to be happy. Then our number one need is for the power to control any condition that we see as threatening. In a moment of loneliness, we might be sure that our number one need is for a companion, someone to share our life with. I could go on here, but I'm sure you get the point. What we believe we need is as inconsistent as the temporary conditions that create it. However, sacred texts from across the ages speak of another need. This is a need to forge a connection to a higher energy, a higher intelligence, the creative force in the universe. Ultimately, this is the deepest and most important need of all. Now, this is why in Michael Ryce's work, when he gives his lecture titled Purpose, Personal Power, and Commitment, Michael Ryce talks about everybody has the same number one priority. The primary purpose in life for every human being, according to Dr. Michael Ryce, at least in that lecture years ago, was to build and then strengthen a viable, conscious spiritual body. To my eye and ear, that sounds like what Guy Finley's saying. Sacred texts from across the ages speak of another need, a need to forge a connection to a higher energy, a higher intelligence, even the creative force in the universe. To develop and then strengthen a viable, conscious spiritual body is going to connect me to that higher energy, that higher intelligence, or that creative force in the universe. And Michael Ryce says that's our number one priority, our primary purpose in life for every human being. Guy Finley says this is our truest deep need. Now, in Michael Ryce's talk, he goes on to say, now the secondary purpose is unique to each individual and can be created using the worksheet that he gives for that. But there's a deep ancient wisdom to the idea that there's a lot more going on here than we can see with our five senses. And just because we can't register it in our five senses doesn't mean we can't experience it. There are other ways to be and allow and experience things. So Guy Finley goes on here in his book, all the actions we take in life to seek wealth, to seek possessions, relationships, fame, and authority, all of them are done as an attempt to fill an emptiness that we feel inside of ourselves. However, when that emptiness can never be filled by the things we seek outside of ourselves, when we wake up and realize that that emptiness can never be filled by anything we seek outside of ourselves, then our ultimate fulfillment can only come when we experience oneness with that higher and therefore more integrated, therefore wiser intelligence, presence, energy, consciousness. And that is the only way our deepest need is satisfied. The following quotes from across time and cultures express this understanding. The first one is from the Old Testament. He quotes, "Give ear to my cry, eternal word, and answer me, for I am in need of you. Awaken new life in me as I yearn to do your will. Dispel the ignorance of my ways as I put my trust in you. You are the beloved. Be gracious to me, heart of my heart, for with you I would walk all day. My soul is uplifted as I abandon myself into your hands." Close quotes. Then he quotes Dr. Maurice Nicole, 1884 to 1953, quote, "Man has inner necessities. His emotional life is not satisfied by outer things. His organization is not only to be explained in terms of adaptation to outer life. He needs ideas to give meaning to his existence. There is that in him that can grow and develop into some further state of himself, not lying in tomorrow, but above him." Then he quotes Chief Dan George from Coast Salish. He lived from 1899 to 1981. Quote, "My friends, how desperately do we need to be loved and to love. Love is something you and I must have. We must have it because our spirit feeds upon it. We must have it because without it we become weak and faint. Without love, our self-esteem weakens. Without it, our courage fails. Without love, we can no longer look out confidently at the world. We turn inward and begin to feed upon our own personalities, and little by little we destroy ourselves. With love, we are creating. With it, we march tirelessly. With love, and with love alone, we are able to sacrifice for others." Then he quotes Paramahansa Yogananda, who was born 1893 and lived until 1952. Quote, "He who created us yearns for our love. He wants us to give it spontaneously without his asking. Our love is the one thing God does not possess unless we choose to bestow it. So you see, even the Lord has something to attain, our love. And we shall never be happy until we give it." Again, Paramahansa Yogananda. Guy writes, "We are not alone in our search for love, or our search for eternal wisdom, or for God. The higher reaches out to us as we reach out to it." The next section is titled Self-Perfection. The ultimate journey within. Guy Finley writes, in a world that seems to be falling apart around us, we hear of many people, especially young people, losing hope and wondering, what's it all for? And who can blame them? It's not hard these days to feel like we're all working at cross purposes to life. We earn money only to see it being eaten up by inflation. We want to live peacefully, but we see violence breaking out around us. There's a health crisis, and a climate crisis, and an economic crisis, and who knows what else could be lurking around the corner. We ask, what is the meaning behind all of this? Is there a larger purpose to life that transcends all these daily concerns? If so, can we know that purpose? And can knowing this purpose give us the higher perspective that we think we need to understand what's happening around us so that we can live our best lives? Helping us understand our true purpose is a primary reason for all true spiritual teachings and philosophies that have been offered throughout time. The following quotation by Epictetus is a good place to start contemplating our questions concerning what this life is all about. Epictetus, from the year 55 to 135, quote, there is only one thing for which God sent me into this world, and that is to perfect my nature in all sorts of virtue and strength. And there is no thing that I cannot use for this purpose. So Epictetus writes, there is only one thing for which the Creator sent me into this world. That is to perfect my nature in all sorts of virtue and strength. And there is nothing that I cannot use for that purpose. In other words, I can use everything that happens in life as the pathway to strengthen my virtue and purpose. My virtue and strength. So Guy Finley writes, what are we able to glean from these encouraging words spoken thousands of years ago? And how do they apply to our life today? First, they tell us that there is a primary purpose that we human beings are meant to fulfill. And that purpose has little to do with struggling to succeed in the world of power, pleasures, or possessions. Our purpose, as called out quite clearly, is to be perfected in virtue and strength, which doesn't mean that we cannot achieve things and enjoy our lives, and yet all of that ultimately means nothing as long as we fail at our primary purpose of being on earth. What's that primary purpose? To grow stronger and become perfected in our virtue and strength. He writes, and an even closer examination of this quotation above alludes to something few of us as yet understand. We come into this world incomplete and imperfect, and our experience in the world is meant to transform us into more perfect beings. A third, even more important aspect of what Epictetus tells us here is that everything that happens can be used for the purpose of our perfection, our growth. This is what puts everything around us into perspective. Yes, unwanted things happen. We're frustrated every day by traffic and rude people, mounting bills, frightening news stories. And yet all of this can be used to help us discover, realize, and then do the inner work to fulfill our ultimate purpose, to be perfected. Life is the grinding stone that polishes and perfects if we will learn how to use our experiences instead of resisting them and growing angry and hopeless. Life is the grinding stone that polishes and perfects if we will learn how to use our experiences for the purpose of perfecting us instead of resisting these experiences, instead of choosing an angry interpretation and response, instead of choosing a hopeless interpretation and response. We can choose differently. We can choose for love over fear. We can choose for compassion over judgment. We can choose for joy over blame and guilt and shame. Guy Finley writes, history is full of examples of individuals who grew stronger, wiser, and more compassionate in the face of great difficulties. They found the path to true fulfillment right in the middle of what could have been their greatest loss. And we all have the potential to do the same. Man's Search for Meaning is a book title written by Erich Fromm. I think that's the name. But it's a story of how he survived in the death camps in Germany in World War II. Now, my mind absolutely flounders trying to think of a worse situation, a worse set of circumstances. Human beings acting from their worst, the conditions for human beings that lead to death and disease being at their worst, the people that have bitterness, anger, fear driving their behaviors, compounding the suffering of those around them and themselves. And in the middle of that, he discovered that which could not be taken from him. He discovered that no matter what they could do to his body, they couldn't take his soul. They couldn't take his mind. He could choose for love. He could choose for compassion. And he did. And he survived, and he got out, and he studied, and he came up with logotherapy, and he taught for years, and he's been a guiding light. His book has been a guiding light for people for decades. Viktor Frankl, not Erich Fromm. Erich Fromm wrote something else. All kinds of other good stuff. But Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning and Viktor Frankl logotherapy, these are things you could look into for yourself. As I was reading this quote from Epictetus, I thought, maybe I should get that book by Viktor Frankl. I should get it out. I have a copy. I'm not sure I still have my original copy from college years, but we've got examples. We have examples that show up in the gentleman they used to call Wild Bill, that the story is told in the book, The Gentle Art of Blessing. We have examples like Nelson Mandela, who was in prison, and when he got out, instead of trying to get vengeance, he chose for love and changed the course of his nation, or offered them a choice and they took it. The next section of the book is titled, Welcome to This Unthinkable Truth
Tim,
That Sets You Free.
Could I ask a quick question?
And Guy Finley writes,
Oops.
We all understand that we human beings have been given the ability to, quote, create, close quotes, the world we imagine and live in. But what few of us understand, but must come to realize if we're ever going to succeed in our inner journey, what few of us understand is that first we are creations of the divine. Only as we plumb the depths of this discovery are we empowered to discern the difference between what is useful and what is not useful along the capital W way, along our path in life. He quotes Albert Einstein here, quote, "A human being is a part of the whole, called by us the universe. This is a part limited in time and space. The human being experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of a prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circles of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty." Now, to my way of thinking, this is the quote that Dr. Michael Ryce paraphrases when he said, Einstein said, if you think you're living separate from anyone or anything, you're living in an optical delusion. This is the whole quote. Einstein was born in 1879 and died in 1955. As we plumb the depths of this discovery, what's the discovery? We are creations of the divine. And the divine, as Way of Mastery points out to us, the divine only creates like unto itself. So that which is divine, that which is all-pervasive and all-knowing and all-powerful, is not a victim ever to anyone. And so nothing that the divine creates will ever truly be a victim to any situation or anyone. Guy Finley goes on here and writes, "This world that we create in our imagination, strung together as it were by lines of thought, is the land of shadows that Plato describes, and it is the shadowland that C.S. Lewis made so real in his brilliant book by the same title. And as such, this world created by our own thoughts is cut off from the capital L light that gives life to all things." And then he quotes Muji, who was born in 1954 and is still alive. Muji says, "There is an intuitive knowing within us that we are eternal, but this gets covered over with the noise we create while identifying with the impermanent. There is an intuitive knowing within us that we are eternal, and yet this knowing gets covered over with the noise we create when we identify with what is impermanent." Muji. Guy Finley writes, "But if we understand this gift of thought and how it can be used properly, we can consciously live in a world that we have made better for ourselves and everyone else." He quotes Lao Tzu, "Kindness in words creates confidence. Kindness in thinking creates profoundness. Kindness in giving creates love." Then he quotes Meister Eckhart, quote, "By humility, out of an enemy, capital H, he has made a friend." In other words, the Creator has made a friend, which is more than to have created a new earth. By humility, the Creator turns an enemy into a friend. Now, the wisdom that's in that quote by Meister Eckhart is found in a number of places. Course of Miracles, Way of Mastery. In Course of Miracles, it says, "There's no place as sacred upon the earth as one where an ancient hatred has become a present love. By humility, he has made a friend out of an enemy. and that is more than to have created a new earth. Then Guy Finley in his book quotes Retsama, quote, "Know that to think is to create, and you will love instead of hate. For when you think, you make a mold. The law, capital L law, will fill that mold if you but hold." So to know that to think is to create means you will choose love instead of hate. For when you think, you make a mold, and the law will fill it in if you but hold to that mold that you've made. Guy Finley writes, "And ultimately, with a mind that is freed of its belief in its own creations, we can hold within our consciousness an awareness of the entire universe." Then he quotes Gregory of Nyssa, Nyssa, from 335 to 395. Quote, "God is able to measure the whole heaven with his span. The earth and the sea are enclosed in the hollow of his hand. And although he is so great and holds all of creation in the palm of his hand, you are able to hold him. He dwells in you and moves with you without constraint, for he has said, quote, 'I will live and move among them,' close quotes." So here's one of these times where the human mind will probably say, gee, this is a paradox. This seems to be a contradiction. Everything is held within God, but we hold God within us. How could that be? I would just refer us to the observation we've made in this work many times, which is that any time I believe I've discovered a paradox, I can be assured that whatever my mind is seeing is only a part of the total truth, the totality of what's happening in that moment. The next section, Guy writes, "Conflict among us between mothers and daughters, fathers and sons, strangers and nations alike, is rooted in the useless action of trying in vain to defend not just our own imagined creations, but to defend the false sense of self-identified that the self-identified with in whatever temporary kingdom the self has made out of its thoughts. Our conflict at every level between mothers and daughters and brothers and sisters and fathers and sons and friends and neighbors and strangers and nations, all of the conflict is rooted in the useless action of trying in vain to defend our imagined creations and the kingdom, the temporary kingdom that we've created with our thought that we think is real, that we project into our image of what's real. So that, he goes on, so that one of the first requirements for those of us who wish to live in harmony, not just with others, but with the creation itself, our first requirement is we must begin with disconnecting and distancing ourselves from any line of thought that pops up to prop up why we believe we must be right and our judgment must be held in place. As Albert Einstein explains why, quote, "No problem can be solved by the level of consciousness that created it," close quotes. Guy Finley goes on, "Let's think this insight and let it sink in. With each mental replay of some unwanted moment, we fall deeper into thought, where the more we think, the more we sink into the labyrinth of a dark experience that's been made to feel real by what we can't see. And this is useless thinking." How do we know these thoughts are useless, he asks. Ask yourself how long you've been looking to the same kind of thoughts to rescue you from the throes of too familiar, troubling situations. And when you know the answer to this question, as this is way too long, then you will be well on your way to parting ways with these useless thoughts. To help you with this leg of your journey, and to help shed light on some of the more familiar ways that we are made unwitting captives of this useless thinking, here are 7 ways that we are made unwitting captives of the useless thinking. 7 ways to recognize useless thoughts before they can make you a captive of their world. Point number 1, any thoughts whatsoever about what tomorrow may bring is a trap. Point number 2, thinking about what someone said or did to you, it's a trap. Point number 3, thinking about your possessions and your possibilities is a trap. Number 4, thinking about what you could have said or you should have done is a trap. Thinking about what some kind of pain or illness meant to you, or thinking about your own aging, is a trap. Thinking about how others displease you or judging others is a trap. Thinking about yourself is a trap. Guy Finley writes, consciously refusing to compromise yourself is the same as choosing to be whole. It's your choice to make. And the point here is, of course, you are already whole and complete just as you are. Nothing of true value can be added unto you. Nothing of true value can be taken from you. So we have 10 or 15 minutes for comments, questions, answers, soliloquies, songs, if you want to sing a song. And in lieu of anyone raising a hand, which I still invite and extend the invitation, I'll see if I can't get through this next section of his book.
Tim?
It's titled, Embark on the Endless Journey of Self-Discovery.
Yeah, can't hear me.
And Guy Finley writes, it seems that most of us, I saw somebody unmute, and so I wonder if that person was trying to talk and I wasn't able to hear. So, is that Celinda? Are you unmuted?
Yes, I am unmuted. Can you hear me?
I have finally set my settings so I can hear you. Go ahead, Celinda.
Oh, good. The reason I called was, one, to tell you that Bingham had tried to ask you a quick question and you couldn't hear her. And also, I thank you for reading this section of Guy Finley's book. When you were reading the 7 reasons that keep us from accessing the divine, I went bingo with all of them. So I just want to thank you. And that's all I have to say.
You're quite welcome. And how long ago was Susan Bingham trying to ask?
Probably 10, 15 minutes ago. I could hear her, but I could tell you couldn't.
Okay. So, Susan Bingham, do you want to try again? Are you in a place where you can?
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. It was sort of good that you couldn't hear me, because what you launched into right after I was going to ask my question was just what you started reading about. It just occurred to me on my own sometime in the last day or two that, whenever somebody sort of it appears to be glibly says, after all, we're all one, therefore wiping all nuances of difficulties off the table and sort of inviting us not to be fussing about anything at all, which is right, but annoying because I wasn't there yet. I realized that if we are separate, if we are connected, then we're automatically connected to God. It's all one thing, sort of. There's not any difference between being connected with God and connected with all of each other. That might seem like a very simple thought, but it just got through my gray matter yesterday or today.
Right. And it's a really important one to keep top of mind. Because as the reading that we did pointed out, we cover that up. We hide that from ourselves with these cravings and desires and artificial needs that we create. And then we pursue, and then we trust the thoughts in those things. And so it's not a little thought. It's a core observation that each one of us can make. And as we do, we bring ourselves back into calm. We bring ourselves back into peace or into awareness of our connection to source and wholeness.
Right.
But to do that, you got to move the bushel baskets around. You got to look underneath them.
I know. So the last task in a wake-up sheet is to set an enlightened goal. And I feel as if that is like a tunnel or a roadway right through to that experience of oneness, because the enlightened goal will remove the bushel baskets that are in the way or the obstacles that are in the way. So in a way, I don't know on what level Michael understood how doing that brings us right into a oneness with everything, but it does. And if we do wake up sheets and get an enlightened goal and do not have that feeling of oneness, it's kind of cumulative. After a while, and without focusing on anything in particular, that seems to be what happens. It's just going to happen by itself.
Yeah. Well, what happens is that we become aware of what's always been there.
Yeah.
Right. You're talking about it as though a new connection is made, but it's not. It's always been there, right? All that's happened is an awareness of the connection has come back to the surface.
You know what's funny is in the Christian tradition, we hear people, fundamentalists, say Jesus is the only way. But the Hindus, I remember asking our teacher years ago how the requirement to have Jesus be the only way, that he has to be strung up, he has to die, he has to have died for our sins. And this teacher said, the Hindus have no concept of that. So it isn't a matter if they choose Jesus as their Lord or not. The whole concept doesn't make any sense. To a Hindu, at least Hinduism is huge with many branches. But one of them says that our pure selves are right there, but it's as if we're dealing with a mirror and the mirror is covered with dust. And so all we have to do is remove the dust and there will be all connected.
Exactly. Right. And that's what you would call, what I would call through Guy Finley's lens, the most practical thing ever, true spirituality. What's that mean? Just the direct observation of how the system works.
And I don't even know quite how to get us into the next thought, but I just went today to Allentown has a huge farmers market. Farmers drive in from all over the country, near enough that they can get here with wagons filled with vegetables, fruit, whatever they've been, chickens, whatever they've been dealing with out in the farmlands, they bring it in. And they bring in the farmland right with them. There's an aura about the countryside that seems to come in with those wagons. And the place is bustling with people doing their grocery shopping. And it's very different from being in Giant or Stop and Shop. As you can imagine, people hawking things, every imaginable kind of thing is sold there. And the Amish have several booths, large booths, where they bring in whatever it is they do on their particular end of their farm. There are baked goods. The women are dressed in traditional Amish dress. It's like stepping into a different era. It's absolutely gorgeous. And when that happens, barriers to separation seem to drop away too. And I'm not sure why. It is much easier for me to have a wide open heart when I'm walking in that market than it might be in another place. Although that seems to be loosening up around the edges. Knock on wood. I'm hoping it stays. But anyway, I don't know where to go with that, so I'll stop talking.
Okay. Well, as you're talking about it, and I think about all of the energy that's flying around when people are bustling and hawking things and, doing their grocery shopping, et cetera, there's just a whole different energy level.
Mm.
And if you don't label it bad or wrong,
Mm-hmm.
right, you're just there with the energy, you'll have a very different experience.
Totally.
I'm one of those people that recognize the value in my own work of, I'll call it a label or an observation like I'm an introvert.
Yeah.
Right. So when I'm around that kind of bustling energy, it's fun briefly for a little bit of time, and then I want out. Right. There's something about my nervous system that says, "Get me out of here."
I know that's true too.
And it's perfectly okay for me to be there and enjoy it for a time, and then say, "Okay, it's not for me." I don't have to label it as bad or wrong in order to say I prefer the quiet, the inner stillness, or a quiet conversation with an individual and a connection that isn't just, what do we call it, small talk or gossip. And that doesn't necessarily mean that small talk is bad or gossip is bad. It's just that I'm not as comfortable with it.
I understand, and I feel the same way, but I want to add a middle ground there. What happens in this farmer's market, it's as if we're all so open to each other, people smiling, making wisecracks, the level of kindness is amazing. And it isn't small talk at all. Not that we stop and talk, but maybe it is small talk, but there's a profound connection there too. So it doesn't feel like small talk.
Yes, exactly. And some people thrive in that and others not so much.
Well, doing it all day, you're right. I mean, I go there for 15 minutes or something to get what I need and get out. I wonder what it would be like to be there all day long. Probably totally exhausting. I don't know.
Yes. It's an energy expenditure. Even if it's a good energy, it's still an expenditure.
Mm.
For those of us that are on the introverted scale. For others, if they're on the extroverted scale, they just keep feeding off of that energy.
Yeah. Mm.
And then they get drained if they have to go home and clean the house or pay the taxes or do some other solitary activity.
Mm.
And so it's not that one is better or worse than another. It's just what fits for the individual if the individual is able to be open and observing instead of judging.
Right.
So welcome, Sally. I see that you came in here near the end. I hope things are going well for you. as we reach the end of our first hour here.
Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. It took me a while to find a spot that was warm enough for me to sit and play my guitar. By the time I found it and got set up and playing, it was 15 minutes before closure of this hour. But I'm grateful for you guys. I've loved the conversation and look forward to chatting this week if I can. Yeah.
All right. Well, I will look forward to that. And you can always email, and then if you need to, set up a way to connect if it's not working during the actual radio show time. If there's a way I can support you through this, please let me know. I'll just remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. And to add to that, you might want to just observe for yourself what I've observed recently, which is that every time things don't work out the way I think they should, they always work out far better than I ever thought they could. Blessings.